Servus YouTube, it is Rain. Welcome to the video. Today I'm gonna be showing you a Cuirass of the Falling Stars build for the Thundercrash Titan, so you can spam that super. And without further ado, let's get right into the build. Let's go over all the mods and armor that you want to use for this build. Our head should be Arc, our gauntlets Void, chest piece Solar, leg armor Arc again, and our class item is Void. We want our helmet to be Arc because we want to slot in hands-on. I use 2 of them, but remember that the second one gives diminishing returns, so it's optional, you can swap it out for anything else. But as this is a min-max build, I'm gonna use both of them to get the maximum out of it. And we're also using Taking Charge. Whenever we pick up an orb of power, we become Charge of Light. On our gauntlets, we want to use the mod Energyconverter. Whenever we are charged with light and we throw a grenade, we get a portion of our super energy back. On our chest piece, we want to use the mod Supercharged, so we can hold 2 additional stacks of Charge of Light. Our leg armor has to be Arc, so we can slot in Invigoration, which reduces our melee cooldown whenever we pick up an orb of power. And also the mod Heavy-Handed. Whenever we are charged with light and we use our melee ability, we regain half of our melee energy back. That way we can use our melee way more often. And that is important for part 2 of this build. Also, while Heavy-Handed is active, while we're surrounded by multiple combatants, defeating any combatant with a fusion, shotgun or sidearm, or submachine gun adds ammo for that weapon to your reserves. That second perk is somewhat useful if you have the right weapons equipped, and maybe in future seasons when there's different weapons, maybe even shotguns that can run with Wellspring or submachine guns that can have that perk. That's gonna be a bit more interesting. Maybe I'm gonna make an update to the build, but we will see. On our class item, we want to use the mod Stacks on Stacks. And that's pretty simple. Whenever we pick up a orb of power, and because we have Taking Charge on our helmet, we gain an additional stack of Charge of Light. So we just need 2 orbs of power to get to our maximum of 4 stacks with Charge of Light that we need for our build. I separated this super recharge build into part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is gonna evolve around the mod Energyconverter, and part 2 is gonna revolve around Heavy-Handed. For part 1, you just need any masterworked weapon. You can also use any masterworked exotic, doesn't matter. You kill 2 enemies, you generate a orb of power, you pick it up with Taking Charge. Stats on Stacks is gonna proc. You are now charged up times 2. You kill another 2 enemies, you generate another orb of power, you pick it up again. Stacks on Stacks procs again. And now Supercharged is full. As the description says, it gives you 2 additional stacks. So we are at 4 stacks total. And now we're gonna throw a grenade, and Energyconverter is gonna proc and give us a big chunk of our super energy. And this just works in the first 50% of your super. So the first half in your super, if you're not over it, you can throw your grenade with Stacks on Stacks and Energyconverter and you will get a chunk of super energy. I'm gonna show you some clips in the background where you can see the difference between stacks 1 to 4. And I highly suggest you wait until you have 4 stacks. It's not that difficult to get 4 kills with a shotgun like the Aikilos or like a grenade launcher. It doesn't really matter which weapon you're gonna use. Just wait until you get 4 stacks and then you throw your grenade. By that time you should be around 45%, 50% of your super, so you're gonna already cut your super cooldown by 2 minutes. I mean, I'm here at tier 8, so the higher your intellect, the better. So part 2 of our build is gonna surround our melee attack. For that, I suggest having a high strength value. Mine sits at tier 8 at 41 seconds cooldown. And it's gonna evolve around the mod heavy-handed. While we are charged with light, we regain half of our melee energy. So that cuts down the cooldown timer from 40 seconds to 20. And in combination with that, we're gonna use at least one weapon that's masterwork that has Wellspring on it. Doesn't matter which one you want to use. Just make sure it has Wellspring on it because it generates ability energy. And we need that to further reduce the cooldown of the remaining 20 seconds. Why is that? Because of the perk impact conversion from Code of the Missile. Whenever we hit enemies with Ballistic Slam, which is our melee ability, we gain super energy, and that pairs with the mod's hands-on on our helmet. So let's go over all the activities that you can use this Cuirass of the Falling Stars build on. The first one would be Gambit, where you could get potentially 2 supers, one in the first half to invade or counter the invader, and another one during the boss phase. I suggest waiting until you get a 4th times multiplier from the envoys to get more damage out of your super. For the Vanguard, normal strikes, you can use it there. You don't actually have to replicate the build here because that'd be a bit overkill. Because usually in strikes there's just one big end boss and not that many mini bosses, but yeah, feel free to speedrun those with this. For this seasonal activities, the battlegrounds, or we are in the season of the Splicer, the Override seasonal activity, you can use it there. There's loads of ad phases where you can build up your super, and there's enough mini bosses to use your super on those and yeah, speed up the process. For Nightfalls, the Adept and the Hero can be used there, pretty easy, just like regular strikes. Just remember to use the champion mods on your gauntlets. For Legend and Master, I do not suggest using this variation of the build because of match game. You cannot use your melee attack against shielded enemies, and with match game in these two in particular, you have groups of red bars that you could usually just finish off with the melee, with the Ballistic Slam, but with match game, those have shields, and if they are not arc shields, then you're gonna have a bad time. So I do not suggest using it at Legend and Master, and just swap out some mods. Instead of heavy-handed, you should get the Shield Break charge mod that charges you up with Charge with Light when you break a shield. That way you can get stacks of light, of Charge with Light, and just instead of speccing into strength, just go for discipline, intellect, and recovery. And that build you could also use for Grandmasters, where it is easier to use them because match game does not apply to groups of red bar enemies. It only focuses on like 1 or 2 red bars, like captains. They usually have a shield, so match game applies to them, and certain majors, and yeah, maybe mini bosses. Do not use it in Crucible, it's completely overkill and yeah, not really useful. Just use any other exotic. Then for raids, Deepstone Crypt, the Atrax Encounter. And for the boss room, if you have another Bubble Titan, you could use it in his final stand. If you don't have a Bubble Titan, then I suggest you play the Bubble Titan because the team benefits more from the Weapons of Light buff than you Thundercrashing once. Any open world activity like public events, etc., pretty overkill in these activities. And what's left? Dungeons, Prophecy, First Encounter, really useful. You got loads of ads to build up your super. and yeah, one-shot the boss, or one-phase the boss, not one-shot. And yeah, Prophecy, a last encounter with the actual boss fight, with the Echo, Fallen Echo. Just to get a big chunk of burst damage there. In the Dreaming City you have the Shattered Throne dungeon, the first encounter with the animal symbols, with the labyrinth, you can also use it there. There's loads of mini bosses, loads of ads to build up your super, just use it there. On the final boss as well, pretty easy, and on the Ogre, so it's really useful in Shattered Throne, in my opinion. On Last Wish, on the Shuruchi encounter, she also has several phases where she's singing her song, and you got enough time in between to potentially build up your super again. And yeah, help out your team with that big chunk of damage that you deal to her. And yeah, that's actually all the activities. So now I'm gonna show some gameplay of me running through the Lost Sector Nessus, the Orrery, and getting 2 supers in 2 minutes, showcasing the build. I thank you guys so much for watching up until this point, and have a good one. See you in the next one. Bye.